Okay, December 9th, 2025, we're back. This is the regular meeting after the study session of the Estes Park Town Board. First, anyone who would like to stand and say the Pledge of Allegiance with us may do so. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. We'll move on to agenda approval. It's a lengthy agenda tonight. Any changes or additions? I see none, and I will take a motion.
I move to approve the agenda as written.
Second.
Mayor Pro Tem Sinak moved to approve the agenda as written. Trustee Hazelton seconded. We can vote. And it passes unanimously. The agenda is written. We're into the section for public comment for items not on the agenda. And please reserve any comment on quasi-judicial items for the appropriate public hearing. Does any member of the public request to speak on a non-agenda item? You will have 3 minutes. State your name and address. And I've got my cool little timer over there if we have any public comment for items not on the agenda. I don't see any, although, you know, when you scratch your ear, it's kind of like an auction or something. I'm like, well. Okay, we'll move forth. Town board comments and liaison reports. We are going to start stage left today with Trustee Brown.
Hi, I got a couple of things tonight. First of all, if you've been following any of the town board emails, our mayor is going to be going into surgery Thursday, and we're all thinking of him and hoping for the best there.
My life is an open book.
It is an open book, yep. Anyway, we're thinking of you, Mayor, and best wishes on that. The other thing that I feel like I need to comment on is a series of emails that were on the town board where I had made an inquiry with the head of the Housing Authority as a liaison on the town board to the Housing Authority. And I sent an email to him asking, might you want to do the ballot 300 discussion, which was on the agenda for the Housing Authority meeting tomorrow morning in executive session. And the reason I did that is I am aware of some sentiment on the Housing Authority board of some desire to file suit to challenge ballot issue 300. Now, I have no idea whether they will decide to do that or not, but I was a little uncomfortable being a liaison from the town board, and if a lawsuit were filed, it would be against the town. And therefore I thought, you know, I shouldn't be there to hear anything about, you know, if there is going to be litigation or even if there isn't. It's not my role as liaison to be dealing with that, particularly when the town might be a defendant in any suit that might develop. And so it is going to be in public, and I will excuse myself. But I didn't think it made sense to have a representative of the potential defendant hear that discussion. So with that, it generated a couple of emails critical of me. One that said that I was going to be a player in the upcoming town or housing authority sponsored lawsuit to upend citizen wishes. And to which I responded that why I made the inquiry and noted that my only role in any litigation like that will be to be a defendant. I am not going to advocate in any way, shape, or form with respect to litigation, and I certainly am not encouraging litigation against the town. So with that, you might have thought it was over, but then another citizen called for a board review of my action in sending the email requesting review of compliance with ethical standards, governance norms, the Colorado Open Meetings Law, and liaison boundaries. I am happy to have the board weigh in on that to the extent they want to address that. In my mind, it's a continuation of efforts to silence me because they perceive that I am not on their side. Yet I very much respect our town organizational chart that puts the citizens at the top of the organizational chart. They have spoken about this issue, and as far as I'm concerned, it's settled as a result. So for what that's worth, that's my only comment about this. It just seems like it's much ado about nothing to me, but I certainly welcome if the board chooses to make a decision or feel like there is some investigation that needs to be done. I'm happy to have them do that. And so tomorrow morning, I'll be acting as liaison to the Housing Authority, and I will excuse myself when they talk about ballot issue 300, which is on the agenda, but will be present for the other pieces. I do not pretend to have any vote or any authority with respect to that, and I'm not, never did indicate that to Scott Moulton, but anyway, that's my comment about that. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. Trustee Hazelton.
A few things tonight, Mayor. For Visit Estes Park, Sarah Leonard officially started last week on December 1st, although she certainly hit the ground running well before then. We're very excited to have her as the permanent CEO on board, so welcome again to Sarah. And she started right away at our board meeting last week with getting ducks in a row for the IGA changes that we have approved as a board and the county commissioners approved as well. So accordingly, we reviewed the first draft of the Marketing Advisory Committee guidelines, and we'll revisit those at the December meeting. Our last meeting last week was actually our November meeting, would have taken place on Thanksgiving, so it got bumped a week. So we'll meet again next week, and we'll be reviewing a final draft of those guidelines. So I've heard from a few folks already about how they'd like to see that Marketing Advisory Committee structured, and I'd encourage more input if people have opinions on how that looks, what the qualifications are, what service looks like, that kind of thing. Please share that with myself or Mayor Pro Tem Sinak or any member of the Visit Estes Park Board so we can get that incorporated. And we also reviewed the first draft of the 2026 budget. Lots of good information in there, some good discussion about how we're spending our money and how we approach our reserves too as an organization. And so again, we'll revisit that at the December meeting on the 18th. Slay the Games is this weekend. This is a new event for the community. Visit Estes Park very involved in. It's very interactive and family friendly. There's activities like snowball fights and all sorts of other games out at the event center on Saturday and Sunday. And from what I understand, there are different activities for each day. So it's worth going on both days. You're not going to get the same experience on each day. And I think they're doing a locals discount. So locals can get 20% off tickets using a code EPLOCAL. Pretty easy to remember. So I hope folks will take a chance to visit that. I know there's been a lot of work going into that and just something new for our community to try in terms of an event. And finally, for Visit Estes Park, I just wanted to thank Deb Gibson. She's been a board member for the organization for many, many years. She is terming out on that board. She will be transitioning to the Marketing Advisory Committee, but she has served the cap of her terms, and she has just really given a lot to that organization. And she and I haven't always agreed on the various issues, but I think I just really have respected her commitment to the organization and to this community. She's been a long-time resident, long history, family history at Estes. So I just want to publicly thank Deb for her contributions to Visit Estes Park. And then restorative justice, I just wanted to thank folks who are participating in the Better to Go dinner. That's this Thursday. If you didn't get an order in to pick up dinner from Mama Rosa's, the deadline has unfortunately passed. But if you did get an order in, thanks for that. I'll be there on the early shift to help people pick up their delicious food. And thank you to Mama Rosa's for supporting RJ in that way. And then we have our December meeting next Thursday, so I'll bring a report back to the following meeting. And that's it for me.
Thank you. Trustee Youngland.
Thanks, Mayor. Couple things. The Sister Cities organization will meet tomorrow, so I'll be able to report back on that in January. The Opioid Abatement Council, I brought, trustees, you have your information in front of you as well as staff, and I brought a few extra, or had staff print out a few extra, and I can always get you the document. But it's our 2025 report that the Region 2 Abatement Council has, we put together every year. And on the back page, the funding area shows the breakdown of how the monies have been spent, how we've allocated those from harm reduction, recovery, planning and coordinating, treatment, additional areas, and of course the recovery being the largest. We have awarded $3.52 million to area nonprofits and organizations for this fight, and we are seeing the numbers decrease. So of overdose and deaths. So kudos to, I think, to the opioid Region 2 abatement. And like I said, if you'd like to have a copy of this, it's interesting reading, I guess, to my opinion anyway. You're welcome to pick up some there or email me and I'll be happy to send it digitally to you. So I have nothing else for tonight, Mayor.
Thank you. Mayor Pro Tem Sinek.
Just to add a few things for Visit Estes Park, most of this are other people that come that give us information. So Kyle Patterson from the park came and we talked about the Department of the Interior just came out with their new fee structure for non-residents for the park. It increases that price significantly. Now, when we talk about non-residents, it's not like non-residents of Estes, it's non-residents of the country. So international visitors are charged a lot more. I think it's January 1st. And so we talked a lot about that. We talked about in October, the Moraine Park Campground is open for winter campers. And she also talked about, if you're interested, the park is going through a wetland preservation. They made a webinar for it. And you can go on the site and look. It's supposed to be very interesting with the wetland preservation. Then we heard from the chamber. In December, they have a Coffee Connect with The Voice, December 16th from 7:30 to 8:30. And I did not catch where they're doing that. So that's a problem. But they're having one December 16th if you want to go to Coffee Connect. And then Brianne Edwards is the new president of the board for the chamber. And then we also talked about an enterprise zone tax credit that businesses here may be interested in. And what she advised is if you don't know much about it, to call the chamber and work out whether you should get pre-qualified for it or not. And then Carly came and talked, but she's going to talk a little bit more tonight. And then Scott from the Housing Authority talked, and he talked, one thing that I found was a little interesting is that the Fall River Village now has some 2 bedrooms, a lot of 2 bedrooms that are available for people. So if you're needing a place to live, that's a good place to check out first. And that's about it. Everything else that Kirby mentioned. Thanks.
Thank you. Trustee Lancaster.
Thank you. I want to start out with just a shout out to the power and communication crews. They were up at dark 30 this morning, taking care of outages and putting things back on and trees that came down. I saw some pictures. The tree cable works. It's amazing. The updates that we've done and what we're doing and putting in the tree cable, which is, for those who aren't familiar, it's a stronger cable that's more insulated that makes sure it doesn't stop outages, but it really is much stronger. And it's certainly, we didn't have any sparks or any fires starting from broken lines. So it's a great move, but they did an amazing job. I appreciate those people so much, and we're glad to have them on our team. Friday after Thanksgiving, I went on a tour of the post office with the mayor. That was very interesting. It was neat to see the behind the scenes and what they do in the space they have. It is so cramped back there, and they are limited in a lot of areas just because of the space. and how they have to move the mail, how mail is stored outside, sometimes in the weather. It convinced me even more of their need for a new facility, and we need something to serve this community. We deserve better than what we've got over there, and I really appreciate what those people do and the conditions they have to work on. Friday evening, went to the Catch the Glow parade with my family. Kudos to all who put that on. It was another great parade. Thank you. Good job. Saturday, I went to the ribbon cutting for the Creative Arts District. We finally got recognized for our community as a arts district under the state statutes. Been working on that a long time, and that's exciting to see that come on. And just to follow up a little bit, because the letter did come to all of us, I just want to say I don't believe Trustee Brown overstepped the bounds as a liaison in what he had done. And I think we had some requests of the board, look into that. I'm fine with that, but I do think, I don't want to be silent on it and we don't say anything when we get a request from a citizen. So, in my mind, he didn't overstep the bounds of what a liaison does. However, I wouldn't have a problem with having a discussion maybe at a study session. Hadn't thought about this earlier, but to talk about what is the role of a liaison? What should we be doing as liaisons? And what are those boundaries? What are those bumpers we should be following? I know I'm really cognizant of it because of being the liaison to the Planning Commission. I deal with a lot of stuff that is quasi-judicial, so I basically just sit there and listen, but it's different there, and I think some discussion wouldn't hurt, and for a reminder for all of us. But I also want to mention, I think the concept of having a liaison with the board, with other entities, and with boards and commissions is a good one. It increases our coordination and our communication with other entities, and we're just not isolated sitting up here in the dais every 2 weeks, and keeps that communication going back and forth. So I think it's still a good system, but maybe some reminders, and we talk about that sometime in the future. Might not be a bad idea. That is it for me.
Thanks. Trustee Igo.
I have no report.
Thank you, Trustee Igo. I get a lot of requests from different constituents for conversation or some such stuff, and occasionally I get a request that for at least the length of my comments, I have to wear this. So we're going to wear this for the length of my commentary here, and then we'll move back to our normal decorum. There, one constituent is satisfied. I hope I can satisfy the rest of you. Visit Estes Park, I think we certainly have the right person in charge. I liked Trustee Hazelton's report, and I've felt that even though I didn't necessarily agree with splitting up into the marketing committee and the board, that's the way it is, and we voted in favor of that. But I do think the most important thing is having the right people in the right places. I think you got the right CEO there. I think having Deb Gibson as a starter on the marketing board is a great start to have the right people in the right places, and that, I think, is what really will make that flow. Yesterday, we had the last meeting of the year for the Larimer Behavioral Health Policy Council down at the Longview Center. Unlike PRPA, where I'm required to sit on that board as the mayor of one of the 4 municipalities with the 3 new mayors of the other 3 municipalities, I sit on that board because I choose to, and fortunately the trustees allowed me to do that when we set up committee assignments. That one is very near and dear to me. Behavioral health continues to be an increasing problem. I'm incredibly encouraged by Trustee Youngland and the work on the Opioid Council and the great progress that's been made across Colorado on that, and behavioral health in general. That Longview Center, when they opened up 2 years ago this month, it was 8 a.m. They had their first walk-in patient. They have 700 a month down there, mostly young folk. What did those people do before Longview was there? It's a wonderful operation. As far as the question of liaison versus voting member, I think that's a great idea. We actually could ask the town administrator in this session to add that at a future study session, it would be great. We do have policies that define that, and to review that would be a wonderful thing. So unless there's someone on the board who wants to act against that, I would suggest that we add that to a future study session to review the policy that does that. That's the extent of my comments. Therefore, the hat comes off now, and we will move on to the town administrator report. And Mr. Mahalik.
Mayor, 2 items tonight, and they're going to be a little repetitive. I do want to also express my appreciation and gratitude for the Power and Communications crews. They started working power outages at 4:30 this morning, wind-driven outages, trees through 3-phase lines, lots of chaos this morning. They responded extremely well. We had a great number of technical experts in the field, and as of 5 o'clock, and I haven't checked my email, so I hope the power is still on, all of the outages had been resolved. We do anticipate with continued windy forecast, especially our more remote areas, are likely to continue to experience intermittent outages with the high wind speeds. They hit trees, they push trees in the lines, but I do want to recognize our power and communications crews that are performing in very challenging conditions. I also want to thank all the employees, volunteers, and especially the indefatigable Michael Young for the work that went into the Catch the Glow parade. That is a remarkable event, and it's always amazing to me that it happens each year because it feels like you're bringing together a lot of impossible things to make one really neat thing happen. So that's all I have tonight, Mayor.
And I think there's a nice little video, probably on the Rocky Mountain channel, I think, well, Michael Young describes his process, and there's a few thank yous from various folks who are involved with that. Yeah, bit of a genius there, that fellow, to use what he has to make what he accomplishes. We will move to the consent agenda. I will read the consent agenda in full into the record. Item 1, expenditure approval list, bills. Item 2, town board meeting and study session minutes dated November 25th, 2025. Item 3, resolution 101-25, grant agreement with the Colorado Department of Local Affairs for a housing and planning grant. And item 4, resolution 102-25, grant agreement with the Colorado Department of Local Affairs for a child care planning grant. Does any member of the public, including the town board, request to have an item removed from the consent agenda? I see none, and I will take a motion to approve the consent agenda as written.
Move to approve the consent agenda as written.
Second?
Mayor Pro Tem Sinek moved to approve the consent agenda as written. Trustee Youngland seconded. We can vote. Consent agenda approved unanimously as written. We'll move on to the action items. The first one for tonight, ordinance 1925, amending the Estes Park Municipal Code, section 1324-120, regarding extraterritorial water service. And we have Senior Planner Hornbeck will, this is a public hearing, I see. Uno momento. So I already read the title of the thing. At this hearing, the Board of Trustees will consider the information presented during the public hearing from the town staff, public comment, and written comments received on the item. Any member of the board may ask questions at any stage of the public hearing, which may be responded to at that time. This public hearing is open. We'll go ahead with the staff report. Paul.
Thank you, Mayor, trustees. This ordinance before you has some very minor amendments to the extraterritorial water requirements in the municipal code. Proposed modifications include stating that applicants for extraterritorial water service shall annex rather than if required. And the other change is assigning the town board as decision maker to waive this annexation requirement. This would be applicable if the town administrator finds annexation is not in the best interest of the town. He may present that finding to the board, who then may choose to waive annexation. That is the extent of these changes. Advantages: it adds clarity and designates town board as decision maker. No disadvantages have been identified. Staff does recommend approval of the ordinance. We have not received much public interest on this particular item. No financial resource impacts. Sample motion for your reference, and happy to answer questions.
And before we do any Q&A up here, any person will have the opportunity to address the board concerning this item. Do we have anyone from the public who would like to comment on this item? I see none. Town clerk, well, before I proceed with that question, trustees, any questions or comments? Town clerk, office, any communications have been received in regard to the item which are not in the board packet?
No comments have been received, Mayor.
All reports, statements, exhibits, and written communications presented will be accepted as part of the record. The public hearing is closed, and I will take a motion on this resolution.
Mayor, I'd move to approve ordinance 1925.
I'll second.
Trustee Eigel moved to approve ordinance 1925 amendment. Mayor Pro Tem Sinak seconded, and we can vote. Mr. Hornbeck, you got it, 7-0. We'll move on to item 2, which is also you, I think. This one is not a public hearing. Policy 403 annexation, which we've had several study sessions and meetings as we've reviewed this as it has shaped. And so you can proceed with the staff report.
Thank you. Adoption of an annexation policy is a recommended action in the comprehensive plan, as well as an objective in the strategic plan. Town board has provided direction at 2 study sessions. The policy states its purpose is to establish priorities in considering annexation, to encourage alignment with the comprehensive plan, provide high-level guidance, but not serve as a regulatory document, and it does not replace town board's discretion on annexations. The policy outlines areas that should guide decision-making on annexations with goals and policies for each area. Under natural environment, the goal is to use annexation as a tool to protect and enhance the town's natural resources and sensitive environmental areas. I'm going to skip the policy statements unless there are specific questions. I'm happy to go into those. On the built environment, the goal is to promote a built environment that enhances the town's character, livability, and long-term infrastructure sustainability. On the economy, strengthen the town's fiscal health and economic diversity through strategic annexations. On housing, expand the supply of workforce and attainable housing through annexation. For transportation and infrastructure, ensure annexations support resilient infrastructure and efficient service delivery. 3 other topics covered. The first is enclave annexations, which are areas completely surrounded by the town that remain within the unincorporated county. The policy states enclave annexation should be considered on a case-by-case basis. Regarding pre-annexation agreements, which are agreements that may be in place largely for a water tap service outside of the town, but could also be agreements for with the county as well. The policy states properties subject to pre-annexation agreements should be annexed promptly upon eligibility for annexation. And this is a new one based on the last study session regarding the Joint Comprehensive Plan. This states that should the model of a Joint Comprehensive Plan go away, the town should initiate discussions on an IGA with the county to ensure continued cooperation on development and annexation. Advantages of this policy would help provide consistency and clarity for those involved in the annexation process. Staff has not identified any disadvantages. And we do recommend approval of policy 403. Public interest has been low. We have received, or the board has received a few emails on the topic. No financial impact with this proposal, and sample motion for your reference. That concludes my presentation.
All right. Does anyone in the public wish to make a comment in regard to this particular topic? There is a hand being raised, I believe. There is a clock being turned on, and you will have 3 minutes.
I don't need 3 minutes. Frank Tice, 685 Peakview Drive. I just noted in the policy, there was no mention of the assignment of zoning when annexations occur, and it seems like maybe that ought to be part of the policy. I won't say what my opinion is, but it's kind of been debated. I've heard a lot of comments related to, it's not a normal rezoning process in annexation. So I think you might examine how you do that. That's all.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Is there anyone else? Yes.
Christine Alpopitz, 650 Devon Drive. I agree with Mr. Tice. I think it should be explained what is involved, but I believe, as do many others, and I'd like you to research the fact that annexations and rezonings are separate processes. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other public comment on this item? I see no other public comment. Mr. Hornbeck, if you have any additional commentary based on the public comments, you can give them to the board.
Yeah, the question of addressing zoning with annexation was discussed a little bit at the one of the previous work sessions, and our view is the comp plan can be used as a guideline. Development code is probably the best way to formally address that, and the ongoing update to that is the vehicle we'd recommend.
Trustees, comments, questions on the topic overall and that specific item? Trustee Eigel?
Thank you, Mayor. That's, for me, that's a deal breaker. That's something that's really a hot button issue for our community, and it's a very legitimate issue on annexation. What happens in that transition? What are the mechanics? Is it something that should be at least acknowledged or addressed in this policy? If we're going to adopt something that handles the transition of a parcel into the town, what happens to the zoning the day after that happens? Does it have to be applied for rezoning? What zoning is applied to it? There's just, unless I've missed it, we don't address that at all in the policy. So I would like to see that, some explanation or acknowledgement of what's going on. I am looking directly over at that side because I know that you all probably have the answers, or perhaps you do, but for me to support this, it would take an acknowledgement or at least some inclusion of zoning as a part of this policy.
Thank you. Trustee Brown?
Yeah, so Trustee Lancaster and I have talked about this in some detail about the possibility that we should adopt a growth management area for the Estes Valley, which would be required to be formalized, I think, in an IGA. And the county right now doesn't want to do an IGA because they don't want to mess with it, from what I can tell. They just don't want to spend the time on it. Yet, I think growth management area makes sense because it would kind of bind the county into the comprehensive plan in a way they're not bound into it right now. So I would like us to discuss, and I think we put it on a future study session to discuss a growth management area. I think for now we can adopt this, but I think that's the next step for us to consider. And so with that, I definitely will support this, but would like to investigate a growth management area to make sure that the county does not vary from the provisions of the comprehensive plan, which require them to approve development more or less in accordance with that comprehensive plan.
Trustee Brown, do you have an opinion on Trustee Eigel's comment about the zoning component, at least acknowledgement?
Well, I do think that the development code is the right place to put that, but I would be fine about adding it here, but I don't think until we review the development code and deal with those issues in that context, it's probably premature to do it right now.
So it could be something added later to this as an amendment. Trustee Lancaster.
Yeah, my comment was the same as Trustee Eigel. We've had a couple comments on that and what happens with that assignment of zoning, and that is an issue. And I mean, I appreciate the thought of that annexation and rezoning are two different functions that we handle, and they don't have to be wrapped up again. I would rather see a statement in there as well, addressing that. We did get one in a public comment from Ms. Hooper that I thought was pretty good, that under built environment, that the effect of the zoning of annexed properties should, where feasible, either take the town zoning closest to the existing county zoning or zoning consistent with the future land use map of the comprehensive plan. I think that's a pretty simple statement. It just says we're going to try and move apples to apples and not take apples and turn them into roast beef when we move something over. It's not a commitment because it does where feasible, and I understand a lot of annexations would come with a change in zoning, but that's a separate question. So I think that was well stated. I would like to see that added to the policy.
Trustee Eigel.
I should have left the mic on to get an answer to the question. What happens to the zoning? If we annex a parcel, how is the zoning assigned to the new town parcel?
It is the town board's discretion to assign a zone district, and discretion and responsibility
At the time of the annexation?
within 90 days.
Okay. Okay, I would like more definition.
Other comments from board members? I'm not yet hearing a consensus to modify the policy. Not seeing that.
Mayor, I could probably go either way. I think it is going to be addressed, and after we get through with this big rewrite, right? I think it is a little premature to do that. With the 90-day window, I would be okay moving forward with this policy, and knowing that we could always, once the development plan got finished, we can always add on to this or revise it. So I would be okay moving forward with this at this time.
Trustee Hazelton.
Yeah, I'd agree with Trustee Youngland on that one. And I wasn't at the last study session when we discussed this for the second time, so I was just reviewing those minutes. And And I know, and I remember from watching it that it had come up once or twice, but I think the vehicle for addressing it being the development code and going through the process of that rewrite, that to me seems more appropriate, especially considering that this is not a regulatory document. This is just a policy guideline. So I think the time will come when we want to have that aligned. It feels a little bit like putting the cart before the horse at this point, so I'd be comfortable with approving as is tonight.
Further comments, trustee Lancaster?
Yeah, I guess is the cart before the horse, or are we kicking the can down the road? I feel like we're kicking the can down the road and not addressing it. But it's not something I'm going to follow my sword on this one, but we've had enough issues from the public and concern, I think, in response to the constituents. This is a very innocuous addition. So I would actually, just to get this moving, make a motion to approve the policy as stated with the addition of an estate statement that says, under policy for built environment, to the effect that the zoning of annexed properties should, where feasible, either take the town zoning closest to the existing county zoning or zoning consistent with the future land use map in the comprehensive plan.
I'll second that.
Trustee Lancaster made the motion as stated on the record. Mayor Pro Tem Sinak seconded. Additional discussion. Trustee Hazelton.
Can you just read that one more time?
Sure. It's actually in our packet, but I'll go ahead and read it. Sure. That under built environment, that the effect that the zoning of annexed properties should, where feasible, either take the town zoning closest to the existing county zoning, basically apples to apples, or a zoning consistent with a future land use map in the comprehensive plan.
The first part of that isn't in our
Isn't,
Does that statement, trustee Lancaster, does that statement then restrict the field of rezoning potential that the town
not
board
at all.
could take?
This
It's
is not at
still
all.
just a
Just
policy. It's not a,
It's just the policy, and it would just be the initial, when we move it over. This would be kind of the floor, but then we always have the ability to talk about rezoning and moving it somewhere else.
perhaps should, might need to be altered a little to, should consider
Yeah, and
one
it
of
does say
those
for,
options.
yeah. I'm fine with should consider, or, and it does say where feasible.
Okay,
It's a public comment, it's not the actual packet. Yeah.
yeah.
It's in the public comment from
Okay.
Ms. Hooper.
You were reading from the policy.
No.
Yeah, that's why I was asking.
Build it right here, the last 2, 3
Oh, yeah. Trustee Brown.
Yeah, I'm not comfortable quite yet with that wording, unlike you, trustee Lancaster. It seems sort of directive, even though it's discretionary, I get that. I really think this needs to be carefully considered in conjunction with the development code rewrite, because we're going to be dealing with zoning for sure with that. And, you know, initial zoning is not necessarily much different than rezoning in terms of criteria, and yet the language proposed would really propose specific criteria that's not present in our current rezoning standards. So I don't see how we can deal with it independent of the rezoning, because it seems like it's a similar process. So I would make a substitute motion to approve policy 403 as written, subject always to any further amendments later. And I would propose that as a substitute motion.
Do we,
I'll second that.
Trustee Brown made the motion to approve 403 as written and consider future changes as appropriate. Trustee Hazelton seconded. Additional comment on the substitute motion? Seeing none, let's take a vote on the substitute motion. Substitute motion passes 6-1. We'll move on to subsequent business. Item 3, it looks like Senior Planner Hornbeck has the floor for a while here. This is a public hearing. The public hearing on action item 3, Resolution 10325, Coyote Run Subdivision, second filing, final plat. And at this hearing, we'll consider the information in the public hearing from town staff, applicant, public comment, and written comments received on the application, of which we've received some. Has any trustee had any ex parte communication concerning this application, which are not part of the board packet? See no statements in that regard. Any member of the board may ask questions at any stage of the public hearing which may be responded to at that time. This public hearing is open. We can have the staff report.
Thank you, Mayor. The Coyote Run subdivision was first approved by Town Board in 2024. It created 4 lots. Lots 1 through 3 are approximately 1 acre in size and are served by a private drive accessed off Peakview Drive. Lot 4 is the subject of this request, is approximately 4.5 acres in size, is now proposed to be subdivided to create 12 lots. Town Board approved the rezoning of Lot 4 from E1 Estate to R Residential in June of this year and approved a preliminary plat for this property in September of this year. This final plat is consistent with both of those approvals, including density, open space, and lot sizes. The site is located outside all mapped hazard areas such as flood, fire, and geologic. It is located within an important wildlife habitat per the 96 comp plan as a high-use area for deer. There are moderate slopes on the site, average around 10%. The applicants request approval of a final subdivision plat to create a 12-lot subdivision. Proposed lots range in size from approximately 9,000 to 18,000 square feet. There is an
Planner Hornbeck, when did we approve the preliminary plat? When was that?
September 23rd, I believe.
Okay, thanks.
There's also an open space tract of approximately 30,000 square feet that features drainage facility. Advantages of this proposal: the application complies with relevant standards of the Development Code, summarized as follows. All lots meet minimum standards of the R zone district. Proposed net density equates to approximately 3 units per acre, less than the maximum of 4. The proposed subdivision is consistent with the recommendations of the comprehensive plan. There are no mapped geologic or wildfire hazard areas. Utility and service providers have reviewed the proposal and expressed no objection to the proposed subdivision. The proposed subdivision will feature single-family residential use consistent with surrounding uses. Public improvements will be secured by letter of credit or cash deposit with this final plat prior to construction. Compliance with zoning development standards. The code requires the layout of lots, driveways, utilities, drainage facilities be designed in a manner that minimizes land disturbance, maximizes the amount of open space, and preserves existing trees and vegetation. There will be some land disturbance necessary for construction of the proposed road and detention pond. Grading does appear minimized to the maximum extent feasible. The minimum open space requirement is met. Existing significant trees are shown on the construction plans, with none depicted as being removed with the subdivision improvements. Individual lots may have significant trees removed depending on the siting of individual homes. Streets, traffic study was prepared and reviewed by Public Works with no adverse findings. Sidewalks, pedestrian connections, and trails are in compliance with code requirements. Sidewalk will be constructed along the new internal street, along with a connection to the open space tract. There will also be a trail constructed along Peakview Drive as a part of the requirements of the first filing, which would obviously serve this development as well. The property is subject to wildlife habitat protection standards. Construction plans will need to confirm only native species are proposed. Limitations on fencing would apply. However, no fencing is proposed. The minimum open area of 15% is met. And lastly, the application is consistent with the rezoning and preliminary plat applications. No disadvantages have been identified. Staff recommends Town Board approve the final plat subject to conditions of approval in the resolution, which are amending the existing deed restriction to specify its applicability to lots 1 and 2 and 7 through 12 regarding affordability restrictions, as well as an addition of notes on the plat indicating applicability of that deed restriction. Numerous public comments were received and included in your packet. Public notice was provided in accordance with code requirements. Future ongoing expenditures for street maintenance, police service, and other municipal services would be minor compared to existing townwide expenditures on those items. Sample motions provided for your reference, and that concludes my presentation.
Does the applicant have a presentation?
No fancy presentation, but 2 comments. I wasn't able to talk to Paul before the meeting, but I would love to be able to change the name of the street, the cul-de-sac, from what's shown on the plat now, assuming I can do that after you approve it with the staff. Staff recommended calling it Twin Lane, I think. It's across from Twin Drive. But the firefighters I know said, oh, we'd almost rather have it be different. It's a little confusing to have Twin Drive and Twin Lane. So I would have to find an approvable name for it. But we've been looking, we've got a couple of candidates. I don't know that the town board cares what the street name is, as long as the staff and Public Works are happy. We could approve it with Twin Lane, but it's going to appear on the plat that way, unless we can change it. Just wanted to let you know that, minor detail. The other thing I wanted to address, you received a letter about saying, well, at the neighborhood meeting a year ago almost, that I stated that I would put the 4 non-habitat lots in a workforce housing deed restriction. And if you listen to the tape, what I actually said was, I believe this is a quote, I would be willing to put a workforce deed restriction on them. However, nobody asked me to. And so we've proceeded through Planning Commission and Town Board for rezoning and preliminary plat and approve them without them. I don't think it would be appropriate to come back at this time and say, would you put them on there after those approvals? So, but that's what I actually said. I would be willing to consider it, but nobody requested it. Thank you.
At this point, we can have public comment to address the board concerning the application. If there's anyone who wishes to make public comment, again, we've received written comment, some extensive, so we certainly have and have read that. Any public comment for this session? We have at least one. and 2. 1,500 to the lady in the pink, so yeah. Yes, sir.
Mike already on? Yep. Larry Bader, 540 Devon Drive. Estes Park, nestled against the borders of the Rocky Mountain National Park, is the envy of many a mountain town. Thanks to the Rocky Mountain National Park, alpine wildlife, and world-class mountainscape, Estes Park has been rewarded with millions upon millions of tourism dollars. Should Estes Park continue down the path of sustainable ecotourism, or does it strive to become the high-altitude leader of affordable, tax-subsidized, deed-restricted housing while striving to duplicate services already available a short distance away all along the Front Range? So close, in fact, that at night I can see the cumulative lights of 1,000 McDonald's and Starbucks. Honestly, I have yet to hear a resident or visitor complain about lack of services. What they seek is already here. With the passing of ballot initiative 300, the majority has expressed their wish to preserve Estes Park. It's the board's responsibility as the people's representative to support this initiative to curb the unabated destruction of Estes Park's most valuable and fragile resources. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there other public? Yes, there is.
Not 1,500.
No, that was my auction joke.
I know.
Whoops, you
I
didn't,
was gonna say, I didn't start
you
yet.
didn't start yet.
Christine Poppett, 650 Devon Drive. I'm here tonight to oppose the final plat for the proposed Coyote Run subdivision filing number 2. I and others have submitted online public comment that I hope was read by all of you. I'm addressing another item that you received emails about. I, as well as 41 others, attended the neighborhood meeting on January 11th that Mr. Tice just referenced for his latest application. I have signatures of over half of the people that were present at the meeting, and you have those people present at the meeting in your packet. People that are against, let me just read this, I'm not feeling well. Providing their support and acknowledgement that the deed restrictions for the 4 half-acre lots have not been completed and need to be as promised by the owner applicant. How can this be approved without the applicant doing what was promised? A link to the meeting materials provided by the applicant were shared with the mayor and trustees prior to the January 24th, 2025 rezoning hearing. It is also included in tonight's packet. The following quotes are from the meeting materials and the meeting itself. Frank Tice stated, and I quote, "All other lots will also have deed restrictions for workforce, as he has seen people in the community who are unable to live here and would like those lots to help with that." He also stated, and I quote, which he just referenced, "So there is no question the deeds will be attainable housing on the habitat lots, and I'm willing to make all the other lots, as workforce housing, there's only 3 other lots in my house, but I'm willing to put the deed restriction on them." Attendees of this meeting heard this promise by Frank and expect it to be honored, as clearly supported by the signatures on this petition that aren't even necessary. I would also like to state that at the same neighborhood meeting, when questioned about new homes, quote, "blending into the existing areas affected," unquote, David with Habitat for Humanity stated, and I again quote, "The architect is Steve Lane. We will work to build so it does not stick out. We are looking to do 1-story homes with no basements, so from the outside it will look a little bit larger," end quote. I ask you, again, how can this be approved tonight without the applicants doing what was promised? This needs to be listed. This is the final plat. What was promised by the applicants has not been done to date. Even if you were to attach specific conditions of approval, if and when this final plat is approved, stating these items that I've addressed tonight, again, all promised by the applicants themselves in public, who would or could monitor this being done? The applicants have not done what they promised to do. This cannot be approved. I thank you. Have a safe and happy holiday season. I'll end by saying I was not expecting Mr. Tice to speak. I appreciate what he had to say, However, I have never heard when something is promised, whether willing or I will do it, whoever has to go back as a neighbor who doesn't want this and ask, would you please do this? It makes absolutely no sense to me. Thank you.
Thank you. Further public comment on this item?
My name is Judy Smith. My address is 661 Bighorn Drive. Obviously, I haven't been to a lot of meetings lately, so I don't know the exact history, recent history. But communities need young families, and this looks like a project that might accommodate some of them. And it looks like a perfectly reasonable project to me.
Thank you. Additional public comment? Yes.
Claire Mollet, 526 Upper Venner Road. I didn't really prepare anything, but I just want to say that we live in a town that completely depends on tourism and hospitality. The majority of people that work in those industries cannot afford the majority of housing that we have available here. So in order for our town to continue to thrive, we need to be able to support the people that need to live here. In order to have a full, robust community, we need young families, we need diverse families. I'll say myself, my sister, my friends, even my friends who work at places like Visit Estes Park, depend on affordable housing. I've spent the past year and a half working on documentaries about people who have depended on affordable housing thanks to the 6E funding. And I've met amazing people, heard really touching stories, and I just think to do anything to try to stop more people from being able to live here and thrive here is a disservice to our economy, the people who live here, the businesses who thrive here. We want families here. We want families to be able to live here, and we want to support the people who work here. Why would we want them living down the hill? I don't believe that this is an issue of keeping our land open or protecting our wildlife. We can see that these projects have met all of those requirements. So I just can speak endlessly. It's people like me, my sister, the people that you walk past on the street, the people that work in the shops and restaurants that you like to eat at, the people who keep the lights on for you, the people that keep the streets clean, the people working at your rec center. Those people need to live here, and they need it to be affordable. So why would we be trying to stop them? Thank you.
Thank you. Further public comment? Yes, sir.
Tom Kaczynski, 610 Devon Drive. You know, if everybody lived close to where they worked, you wouldn't have these traffic jams out in Denver. You wouldn't have them in LA and all over. I mean, people in the Windy City, they take the train for what, an hour? The people in LA, my brother takes an hour and a half to get to work. I mean, we all can't just, I mean, yeah, I would love to have everybody here, but we can't all afford it. I mean, people go and do their job, and, you know, nowadays, it's not like when we were working, where we worked for 30, 35 years for the same company. A lot of people just, you know, the younger crowd, they take their next job and their 401k, and they move on to whatever town they want next. So it's not like, you know, when I was working, and we've spent years and years and traveling and commuting also. So I can appreciate people wanting to live and work here. I've also talked to people in the hospital field who don't want to live up here. You know, their family and their Kohl's and their Target is down the hill. So I can see both sides. Just respect mine. Thanks.
Thank you. Other public comment? All right. Does the applicant have any additional commentary? At this point, trustees, other questions or comments? Town clerk. Oh, trustee Lancaster.
Thank you. I was waiting. I just want to mention something that Mr. Tice said, and sometimes we forget about this, but the idea of changing the name. Probably 20 years ago or more, I actually wrote an intergovernmental agreement that for all the cities in Larimer County on standards for road naming. And part of that was because of the issue with emergency services of having names that were similar or names that were the same in different places. I remember one of the examples was in Fort Collins, we had a Stewart Avenue and you had Stewart. One is S-T-E-W-A-R-T and one is S-T-U-A-R-T. And it's not so as much now with GPS, but still, for emergency services, they get a call and somebody says there's an accident at the corner of Stewart and College Avenue, and you don't know which Stewart it is. Minutes make a difference. And I think when somebody calls up and they're asked to come to Twin Drive or Twin Circle, I think every municipality at that time signed on to that intergovernmental agreement. I think it got forgotten about. It's probably in one of our files somewhere, but I do support the idea, and I think we should look at those kind of things of redundant names can cost seconds, and seconds can cost lives, and it's an easy change. But I just wanted to bring that up as we have other things that come up like that we do make those considerations in street naming.
Mayor, if I may, the IGA is certainly something we look at, and in fact was the reason we requested the continuation of the name, as that's the IGA encourages streets to continue across intersections. I'm happy to further discussion with the fire district on an appropriate name if they're opposed to it, certainly.
Can I just, thank you. I'm glad to hear that, because that was one of the issues that came up, were roads that you'd go down and they just changed the name in the middle of the road. And, it's one thing for 10 blocks and all of a sudden the same road turns into something else, and that was one of the conventions. So if you're following it, that's great. I'm glad it's still there. And if the idea is that it's a continuation of the road, that makes sense. But yeah, thank you. I'm glad you clarified that. And I'm glad it's still working.
Trustee Brown.
So I just want to mention, there's been a lot of discussion around this community about ballot issue 300 and very little about 301. So remember, 301 failed and means that our bonuses under our development code for workforce housing and attainable housing remain. And they remain there because the voters of this town voted that way to keep them in place. So some of the complaints about this particular project have been, argued before, and yet because despite that argument, the voters approved to keep the bonuses for workforce housing present. So I think the voters have essentially said to the neighbors, to the rest of the community, we want more workforce housing, and this seems like an appropriate way in which to get workforce housing in a really moderated way, not like a large apartment building. It's not going to be like that. So I think this is not exactly the time in which we should argue and work out that. That was back in the time of the rezoning in the first place. So I understand the passion of the people that live nearby and their desire not to have this development go in. But the voters have spoken about the desire to have more workforce housing. And therefore, I think this is consistent with that.
Additional comments? Trustee Eigel.
Thanks, Mayor. I have to weigh in. I voted against this at each step along the path here, and a couple of reasons for that. And I want to expand a little bit. Claire had some persuasive comments. I think that Frank, you had some interesting comments. I did hear a little bit of a wiggle on a technicality of I'm willing, but I am not saying I will. So I would like you to further define that if that is important to you at this time. That would help me make a decision in this process. But I started this with a concern about rezoning what felt like a speculative purchase, buying a piece of land, speculating that zoning could be changed, and indeed it rolled forward and the zoning was changed. And I have not had the sense personally that that zoning was consistent with the neighborhood, that it was consistent with what neighbors can expect when, as a community, not as a neighbor who touches your property, but what neighbors in the community can expect when there is zoning. You buy a piece of property, it's owned a certain way. We're not arguing that tonight, but I have taken an opposing position on this throughout the process. I did not support the preliminary plat for this project for the same reason, that I didn't feel like, as a representative, I was going to be casting a vote in the confidence of many people that I had spoken with about this project that was not in support of it. So as a representative, I did not support it at that point. I do believe that we need to provide housing as a community for the people who live and work here. I also believe they should be challenged buying a first home or an early home to have to really work for it. And there's a lot of suffering in the world of buying houses and growing up and whatever that is. And I don't think it's realistic to move into the perfect house on a piece of land that's a single family dwelling. It's a philosophical conversation, but I am glad that there's not a 3-story apartment building on that property. And I'm glad that these homes will be lower level, that it's going to be like looking over a neighbor's fence. And I am balancing that with the demand of the community to have housing that is possible to get into. I don't know that putting apartment buildings up is our future, or high-density developments in one building that you can't see past is good. I like that these are a single level. I would like to hear that there's going to be some commitment towards workforce housing. I feel like that's a little bit of a technicality. I'm not demanding a response from the applicant. I'm curious about that. But my vote is in the air coming into this meeting. And so I want the community to understand that there have been a couple of statements tonight that are persuasive, that are important pieces of information, as well as what we've received in the packet. So public opinion does matter, and this has been a challenging issue in that location. But for the poster child of the election, that is the greatest measure of what our community wants, right? An election is where you hear what the community wants. The community was clear about having a concern about zoning, and so that is heavy on my mind as well. I'm acknowledging my opposition previously to this issue.
Thank you. I don't see additional commentary. As I recall, the zoning passed with a supermajority, 5-2. The preliminary plat was a 6-1 vote. I actually voted against the rezoning also. But we're not debating those. We're discussing the final plat. I see, are any communications been received in regard to the application which are not in the board packet?
Mayor, the clerk's office did receive an email shortly before the start of the study session which staff were prepping for the meetings and were not able to put in front of you this evening. Just making sure you're aware to be transparent.
Thank you. Board of Trustees, further questions? All reports, statements, exhibits, written communications presented will be accepted as part of the record. Public hearing is closed. We can move to a motion.
I'll move for the approval of Resolution 10325.
I'll second.
Trustee Lancaster moved to approve this resolution, and Trustee Hazelton seconded. Any further comments? Trustee Brown?
Yeah, before we, since you were unable to get that public comment in front of us, can you read it to us?
We've never been asked that question. I'll defer to the attorney's office. Do you want us, or are we able to read public comment that we received by email that was not presented to the board?
Sure.
Okay. So this public comment is from David Emerson with Habitat of Humanity. It says, to the Estes Park Board of Trustees and other interested parties, my apologies for not being able to attend tonight's meeting regarding the final plat for Coyote Run. A prior commitment prevents me from being there, but I wanted to offer clarification on one point raised in opposition to the filing. One public comment objects to the final plat on the basis that during the neighborhood meeting on January 6th, it was stated that the 3 newly created non-habitat lots would receive a workforce deed restriction, and that this has not occurred. While I understand and see that the meeting minutes reflect such a statement, it has not been my understanding that a deed restriction on those 3 lots was ever intended to be a binding or required component of our application. In the presentation I gave at that meeting, the concept plan map clearly labeled those lots as market rate lots, quote, at the public hearings for the preliminary plat, both at Planning Commission and Town Board, the only deed restrictions discussed or represented were those associated with the 8 habitat homes. The conditional approval outlined for both those meetings reference only those 8 habitat lots as being deed restricted. That said, I do want to express my genuine hope that the 3 market rate lots are ultimately purchased by individuals working in Estes Park. Based on my conversations with Frank Tice throughout this process, I believe that is a likely outcome. However, we have not discussed a formal deed restriction for those 3 lots, and I do not believe that a deed restriction needs to be put in place to provide this opportunity. Thank you for your time and consideration. David C. Emerson, Executive Director, Habitat for Humanity of the St. Vrain Valley. That will be included in the final packet for this item, and there were no additional comments beside what I just read.
Thank you, Bunny. And I promoted you to town clerk a minute ago, town clerk staff.
Mayor, can she say what time that email arrived?
That arrived at 3:39 p.m. today.
Okay.
Trustee Hazelton.
I don't want to belabor the vote, but I just want to make a comment that I think it's, certainly this is a new resolution we're considering. There are several steps throughout this process where we've had different votes for different items. And I just want to remind the board, I think we're all aware of this, but I remind the board that after the vote is made, one of our policies is that you go with the will of the board, regardless of how you personally voted for that item. And I understand we're talking, this is a different resolution, but I don't know if it's helpful to continually rehash votes that you've made that were in opposition or supportive of previous items that passed or were rejected. I think we have to remind ourselves that as a board, we vote as 7, and whether you voted for something that passes or against something that passes or vice versa, we move forward collectively as a board. I've certainly had many that I voted for that didn't pass, and that's the way it goes.
A very good statement, and thanks for making it. It's the same as when the community votes on something and it becomes law, and we support it. Trustee Youngland.
I just wanted to have a few comments before I vote. I will be voting for this. I think everything has been met, all the requirements. What was read, that email is how I understood it as well. Reading back, even I questioned if they were supposed to all be deed restricted or not. So anyway, I just wanted to say everything has been met to the satisfaction of what's required, and so I will be voting forward positively on this.
I know that we had the motion from trustee Lancaster. Who did the second? I stated, yeah, trustee Hazelton. Further commentary? Bunny, we can move to a vote. The final plat passes unanimously. We'll move on to the next item on the agenda. Resolution, this is item 4, Resolution 10425, Supplemental Budget Appropriation Number 2 to the 2025 budget. Paul Hornbeck gets to take a break, and we have Director Zimmerman here to present this item.
Thank you, Mayor and Trustees. So we have the 2025 budget amendment number 2, and I have up there the revised total expenditures, and that is the total expenditures figure for this, for all funds for this entire budget amendment. So the worksheets were attached with the agenda item, which went into detail about all the changes. Throughout the year, operational needs and project requirements arise that were not included in the original budget, such as grants or capital needs or program demands. So that's why we come forward with a budget amendment. In this particular budget amendment, the resolution calls out only the total appropriations or the expenditures per fund. So the following slide goes into a quick summary per fund of the most significant changes. And for the general fund, we had an increase for $98,000, which pertained to Mrs. Walsh's Garden Pond project, which was previously approved by the town board, and the funding is entirely from restricted donations that were held in our fund balance reserves. For the Workforce Housing Child Care Fund, we have an increase of $360,000 in expenditures. $200,000 of that pertains to 2 particular DOLA, Department of Labor and Affairs, grants that were approved tonight on the consent agenda. There is a $150,000 increase to our child care assistance funds due to additional demand, and there was $10,000 in a donation acceptance from the Frozen Dead Guys Days Festival that specifically is to be spent on ADA improvements for the Mountaintop Child Care. And then we have for the Power and Communications Fund a decrease in expenditures, and the Utilities Department identified that they have lower than anticipated purchasing power supply cost with this budget. And for the Water Fund, we have various changes with the Water Fund. We have a $90,000 decrease to our purchasing of water. We have $54,000 in savings for personnel. That goes to offset some of our increases with the interest expense related to the CoBank construction loan for Prospect Mountain, and we have a slide that will go a little bit more into detail regarding that. And then we have a decrease of about $225,000 related to capital project closeouts. And then finally, for the Fleet Maintenance Fund, we have a $53,000 increase that we're recommending a purchase of a welding tent and fume exhaustion system that we're utilizing fund balance reserves from that fund. And in summary, this budget amendment still maintains our fund security. We meet our Finance Policy 660 restrictions, where we have our general fund ending fund balance is at 36.4% as projected, meaning we spent all of the expenditures and we received all the revenue that we budgeted. Our policy stated a 25% reserve, so we're well above that. So our ongoing expenditures do not exceed our revenues and our available fund balance, and our sales tax revenue projections do meet It's coming in very, very close to our budget. The water fund capital improvement projects and the operating budget, they're requesting an amendment to align with their master plan and financing cost. We do have one position, or FTE, full-time equivalent change that's being proposed in this budget. It's for a museum assistant. It's part-time, term limited. It is being paid out of restricted donations and our fund balance. And we don't have actual cost related to this position in our 2025 budget because hiring will not probably begin until 2026. So I'll be coming back to the board with a budget amendment for the 2026 budget. So the capital improvement plan changes that we have identified, again, for the Workforce Housing Child Care Fund, we have those grants and a donation for the Fleet Maintenance Fund. We have the welding tent and fume extraction system, and for the water fund, we'll go over all of those changes, but we're closing out quite a few projects. So it aligns with our master plan. And in regards to the water fund CIP, I wanted to update the board as far as our loan with CoBank. We did a first loan extension that's set to mature on February 1st of 2026. And this is with, we are CoBank, which is the construction piece for the Prospect Mountain Waterline project. We are waiting to get refinanced with the USDA. There were delays. This second extension that currently attorneys are working on, I'll be bringing to the board in January. Due to the government shutdown, we still do not have the refinancing into the USDA loan program. So we can extend it. The furthest we can extend it is till December of 2026. And there will be no early payment penalty. So hopefully we can get this refinanced. With that in mind, we are requesting that the Mall Road project still be appropriated of close to $4 million in CIP, but we delay actual construction until the financing has been secured. And that's just a conservative fiscal approach to make sure that we don't have any, how can I say, fund balance is secure.
We are specific, just so the board knows, we are specifically highlighting that. That is an item in your 2025 strategic plan. It's an objective to initiate the Mall Road construction. This approach will likely mean that objective is not complete, but we think it's prudent to balance the financial risk as such, knowing that we have this USDA financing closure hanging out there.
Thank you. And this legend was put together from the utility department. It explains the name of our various water capital projects. With this budget amendment, again, they're proposing to reshuffle some of these project budgets to Mall Road, and there's about $200,000 that will actually fall to our fund balance in the water fund. The recommended changes were identified in the master plan and responsibly utilizes our current funding. We do have the utilities team here to answer any questions regarding those. And with that, entertain any questions for this particular resolution.
Before we go to trustee comments, is there any public comment on this item, this resolution? I see none. Trustees, questions, comments? Trustee Brown.
So if I understand the first slide you showed, the net aggregate effect of this is actually a decrease in expenditures, correct?
That's correct.
Thank you.
Of all funds, yes.
Trustee Hazel, or young one, pardon me.
I just wanted to acknowledge, I really appreciate the utilities putting that project off on Mall Road. I think that's a very good fiscal responsibility. So I was happy to hear that when I read that we are still waiting on that loan to finalize and what that's cost us in the meantime. So I was glad to hear that, and thank you very much.
Trustee Agel.
You mentioned an employee being added to the museum. It's donation funded. Will the donation fund that into the future? Is it a time limited?
It is term limited,
Okay, okay, I missed that part.
yes.
Thanks.
Seeing no other lights, do I have a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve Resolution 104-25.
I'll second it.
Trustee Youngland moved to approve 104-25. Trustee Eigel seconded. Any other comments? We'll vote. There you go.
Thank you.
Passes unanimously. 7-0. We'll move on to Resolution 105-25, expedited review process for affordable housing projects. Thanks for your patience, Manager Bangs, in getting to your item. And you have the floor.
All right, good evening. The town affirmed its commitment to expand affordable housing by opting into Proposition 123 following its approval back in 2022. The Proposition 123 established an affordable housing fund to support local governments across Colorado. As a community that opted into Prop 123, the town has secured funding through this program, primarily for the purchase of Fall River Village. As a condition of participation, all enrolled communities are required to implement an expedited review process for qualifying affordable housing projects. So there's a resolution before you this evening. The process must be formally adopted no later than December 31st of 2026. However, if we were able to adopt something prior to the end of this year, we would be eligible for an additional $50,000 in funding from DOLA. So we worked with our legal team, and the resolution, as it's presented, there are specific definitions that had to be included in the resolution, primarily what affordable housing means. So that's on your screen now and is aligned with what we as a community sees as affordable housing, as well as the various application types that would fall under this expedited review process. 50% of the units within the development must fall within the affordable housing criteria to be eligible. Sorry, I'm looking at two screens here. Make sure I covered everything that was in the memo. The community development director or a designee would review and decide which applications are eligible for this process. So there is some allowment of that within the resolution. As far as a financial impact goes, there is, again, eligible for $50,000 incentive from DOLA, and the town proposes that we approve this proposition or approve this resolution in order to continue to be compliant with the next round of Prop 123 funding. If we don't become compliant with all of these, we will not be able to receive funding from DOLA in future rounds. I'm able to answer any questions.
Are there any public comments on this item? I see none. Trustees, questions, comments? Trustee Brown.
So we have a public comment that was in the materials, but it's not attributed to anybody. And so do we know who made this public comment? It's essentially questioning whether 90 days is sufficient time to seek appropriate public input.
I could probably look that up. It was likely comments maybe we received by email if the board wanted to stand by.
90 days is a review process that a number of other municipalities have adopted. Typically, it's my understanding that that these developments, these applications are reviewed within that 90 days already, which is why we were able to implement a resolution stating that we were committed to that process.
So it wouldn't change our process really at all as a result?
That's my understanding, is that we're already typically within that 90-day window, so this resolution just solidifies that commitment. It does allow for extensions, so as the applicant, if they're caught up with something from, one of their consultants or a builder or something along those lines, they can ask for an extension or they can opt out of that 90-day review process.
Trustee Lancaster.
Yeah, I was talking about the same thing, and I don't think we need to change the policy, but I just want to state that, and I think you can state for the whole board, we are still committed to a strong public input, and that we won't do anything in this expedited process that would weaken or compromise community input. I think that's the position of this, us as a board and us as a town.
Absolutely.
And even though it's not in there, I want to state for the record, that's how we all feel about it.
This doesn't skip any process or any obligation that the community already has in reviewing these.
Bonnie, any further information?
I think it would take us some time to look up who submitted that comment, but what we'll do is make sure that we include that in the final packet material of who submitted those comments to us. It could have been an attachment, just an oversight by staff. We'll make sure we include it in the future.
Thank you. And thanks for the discussion and clarification. That being said, do we have a motion?
I'll move for the approval of Resolution 105-25.
I second.
Mayor Pro Tem Sinek moved to approve 105-25. Trustee Brown seconded, and we can proceed with the vote. And the resolution passes unanimously. We'll move on to item 6, the guiding philosophy for events. And this is Management Analyst Simpson who has this topic, and it's all yours.
Good evening, Mayor and Trustees. Okay, so I bring before you the updated guiding philosophy for events. The updates that are in this document were based on the feedback and direction received at the November 25th study session. So I'm just going to go through the document and I'll point out the updates as I go. So the town of Estes Park produces and supports events that showcase the unique community of Estes Park and support our local economy and nonprofits. Events are designed to celebrate local culture, arts, and recreation while providing a safe and positive experience for residents and visitors alike. Events and visitor services staff will prioritize collaboration at all stages of the event process, planning, execution, and evaluation, environmental sustainability, and work to mitigate any adverse impacts on neighborhoods, businesses, and public services. So this sentence coming up here, event success for the town means high-quality events that are in keeping with the spirit of the community and contribute to a vibrant economy. So that was just a statement requested on what success for the town means with regards to events. And then I broke out the individual elements that we discussed a couple of weeks ago into guiding principles. So the first is prioritize collaboration. The Events and Visitor Services team works with both internal and external partners on event planning, execution, and evaluation. This collaboration helps ensure that adverse impacts are mitigated and that all stakeholders have an opportunity to engage in each stage of the process. Next, we have focus on events that showcase our unique community and celebrate local culture, arts, and recreation. The town's signature events are popular and appreciated by locals and visitors alike. These events should showcase the unique and diverse aspects of our community, from Bigfoot Days to the Rooftop Rodeo to Catch the Glow. Each signature event highlights a fun and unique aspect of Estes Park. Events are intended to celebrate our local culture, arts, and recreation. And the town will prioritize local vendors when possible and will encourage all attendees at the town's signature events to visit and patronize local businesses. So this next one here was added based on feedback that we received at the study session. And this is addressing the prominence of alcohol at events. And I do want to point out that in this first sentence, we are specifically talking about town-owned events. So the town will not add any new events that would be considered alcohol-centric through title or substance. We'll reevaluate current events for ways that the prominence of alcohol may be reduced, and will discourage the use of town-owned event facilities for private events that are solely focused on alcohol consumption. Next, we have reserved Bond Park for civic uses and support. Bond Park should only be used for civic uses, publicly owned events, or events that support local nonprofits. Efforts should be made to ensure that Bond Park events are not repetitive or generic. Exercise good stewardship for the community. Our events should invite visitors to engage responsibly with our mountain community and balance celebration with stewardship. Events and visitor services staff will prioritize efforts to reduce waste and work with internal and external partners to manage traffic, parking, and transportation, as well as mitigate adverse impacts on neighborhoods, businesses, and overall public services. While town financial resources should be focused on town signature events, partnership opportunities will be evaluated on a case-by-case basis. We did add that section as well. And the town will manage and be attentive to road closures and will work to mitigate impacts of large events on private property. That was also something we added based on your feedback. Assist outside event organizers in producing successful events. Events and visitor services staff will help outside event organizers produce successful events by serving as a resource for planning, permitting, and execution, keeping all elements of the guiding philosophy in mind throughout the process. Prioritize public safety. Events and visitor services will work closely with the Estes Park Police Department to ensure that all attendees have a safe and positive event experience. The police department will always respond to public safety incidents, but they do not have the resources to provide continuous security at events. Event organizers that request this level of security for their events will be required to fund these resources. The overall safety and security of the town will not be compromised based on the individual needs of a specific event. And then this next and last one was something else we added for political, religious, and First Amendment gatherings. The town will work to manage events while respecting the constitutional rights of our residents and guests. And we added a section on implementation. The guiding philosophy is to be approached like a town master plan. Implementation will rely on policy and operational decisions. And then finally, a board review. The guiding philosophy, will be reviewed with each new town board and will be shared with new members during the Events and Visitor Services Department onboarding process. So happy to take any questions or comments at this time.
Is there any public comment on this topic? Trustees. Trustee Igo.
Can you scroll up to page 1? The it was about alcohol. And you indicated, you said, for clarity, this is town-owned events. Then it goes on to say, will discourage the use of town-owned events facilities for private events that are solely focused on alcohol consumption. I think that covers everything. And I really appreciate that you incorporated everything we talked about. This policy gives us a really good document for guidance or consideration when we're looking at events or somebody considers Estes Park a good place for an event. I think this captures everything that you started with, we refined, and this is a good finished product. So I really appreciate your hard work on it.
Thank you very much.
I was gonna say the same thing. I don't know how you got that out of our discussion, because we were all over the place. And I really think that you got the essence of it, very good, and including what the comment that I was making was about the religious and political. I think you stated it quite well.
Great, thank you.
Trustee Youngland.
I was going to say the exact same thing. What a great job you did. You captured everything that we talked about, and you heard us so well. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
We're just going right down the line. I heard from a couple of folks about the alcohol at events piece, so I just wanted to clarify, and I think you did a good job of calling it out here, and the people who reached out to me were like, now I can't have a beer at like Pumpkins and Pilsners or something like that, and that's not at all what's coming forward. Just for folks who weren't privy to the study session conversation, we heard fairly loud and clear through the event survey that there's a desire for more than just alcohol-focused events, and that we know that beer, wine, or spirits may be elements of certain events, but when it comes to town-directed events and the way that we manage what we provide for the community, we hear that the community is perhaps a little bit more interested in just varying the slate. And so I think this is a great way to acknowledge that and keep that in mind for us. And by no means does it mean that there will never be a beer at Baum Park again or anything like that. So I do want to clarify that for my circle or folks who felt comfortable reaching out to me about that. And then I also did want to call out specifically, I very much appreciated the review with new town board, because I think it's a great way. We talked about that at the study session, and the way it's phrased is so perfect because it gives us an opportunity when new elected officials come on board to be looped in, and also that's a good kind of check-in for where our community is at that time. And then that you included the staff piece of it too, because as the trends change in events and visitation and things like that, it will be great to hear from new staff members how they feel about the policy too. So great job.
Thank you.
Trustee Brown.
Well, pretty much ditto as well, but I have a question about the one that says Reserve Bond Park for civic uses / support. So it is my understanding that currently there are actually some private events used at Bond Park. And as I read this would cause those events to be canceled or not renewed, which I'm not sure is what I heard. I heard that we would stay away from new ones, but I didn't think we were going to cancel or not renew any of the old ones.
Rob, do you want to?
Yes, currently we've got 2 events in Bond Park. One's a wine festival, and one's Handmade in Colorado, that are actually private events and not events run by nonprofits here in town or the town.
Well, those aren't run by nonprofits, those 2 you mentioned.
Correct.
So does this policy suggest that we will not renew those?
That's what it suggests, yes.
I don't know. That's not exactly what I heard, but maybe others heard differently.
Trustee Youngland.
I thought, to my recollection, that we were not going to turn away, we weren't going to remove any existing events, but we were not going to take on additional events that didn't qualify under this, is what I thought. So I thought that those 2 events could stay, but that's what I got out of the conversation.
And I'm not even sure what I got out of the conversation, because I feel that way, for sure. But I have a feeling that when we were talking about it, I got the impression saying that we weren't going to renew those collectively, but that wasn't what I wanted. So I agree with you guys, but I'm not sure if that was really what was said or not said. So.
I didn't pick up that we were going to cancel those things.
Okay, good. Well, that's good.
That would be the only modification, I think.
Is that a modification that we would need to spell out in this guiding philosophy? Like, or do we put a note that says current, as of the writing, current events could be grandfathered in, or are we is it generally understood since it's not a regulatory document?
Either one would work. It has should in there instead of shall, so that gives wiggle room. We're hearing from the board policy direction here. If you really wanted to add something to the policy, I'd suggest something such as existing private events in Bond Park may remain at board discretion, but should be encouraged to explore other event venues. We do frequently hear with all of the Bond Park events, as Management Analyst Simpson explained or uncovered in the survey, concerns about competition with downtown business. I'm hearing from the board a desire to not change any current events downtown in Bond Park, but that doesn't mean that we can't encourage them or incentivize them to potentially move those operations to our events complex, which is probably a better fit overall.
Sure. Yeah, and we can reference that in the motion.
I think that our conversation is just exponentially increasing the value of those commercially owned events by saying that they can continue, even though they are not consistent with the guidance we received from the community. The community said less. They didn't say, well, you can have a little, I mean, they're very clear about alcohol events and about coming up with a policy. So I think that we talked about ad nauseum with short-term rentals, if there's a change in ownership, if there's a transfer, if there's some difference in that entity, I think we do have to address it, and we have to be very articulate about that, because these are now events that if this happens, we did talk about culling back the number of events that we have. We did not say, we can watch the video, but the consensus was everything just as usual. We did talk about bringing that back a little bit. But if we allowed these two entities, as an entrepreneur, I'm thinking, what a great opportunity for these entities, commercial businesses, to have that weekend and that right. If that transfers or goes, if they sell that, the value of that event, to have a private event downtown Estes Park, is valuable. So I think that we do need to be very cautious, careful, and articulate about the way that we handle those commercial events. And either we look at a period of time that they can continue to exist, whether that's a year or 5 years or 20 years. I think that that kind of a term would be reasonable. Or look at a change in entity, sale of the business, any of those triggers that would end that right that we're giving them to have a foothold in Bond Park in the center of our community for a commercial business venture.
I actually don't agree with you. I don't disagree with you at all. The only thing is that we also, yeah, no, I know. I agree with you. But it is a yearly contract. So I don't think we give them any, like say, we're going to keep you for 5 years. I think that, this is our policy, that this is what we're trying to do. And each year, it's still an open game for them. I'm sorry. I mean, it is a private business, and it is going to be a different board. And so I don't think we say you get 5 years, you get 20 years, you get 10 years. I think every year, maybe you have to evaluate it.
Ask when it renews.
Sorry?
On your microphone, can you ask when they renew?
When do they renew?
Every January, the permits come up for renewal, so it's a yearly basis.
Yeah, so it's a yearly basis anyway. I actually don't think we give them 10 years or 5 years or whatever. I think we do it yearly, and, we kind of see how it goes. And if the public does outcry and go, wait, we don't want these private, okay, well, then we have room to change that at that point. But I don't think cutting them off this year is fair either, so, okay.
Trustee Brown?
So I agree with Marie on this, and I like your language. And I would prefer to have that language in this policy or something similar to it. I don't know if we can adopt this with that amendment at this point, and I'll leave it up to the mayor and town administrator to help us out with that.
Another way we could approach this is in keeping with following this as a master plan. In your municipal code, there is a specific section in the municipal code pertaining to Bond Park events. We could bring a modification to that section forward such that maybe it's not every year, but maybe after every regular election, the new board reviews all private events in Bond Park so that it's not just you approve it once and it's good to renew annually unless something happens. Because effectively, that's how the ordinance or the municipal code is written right now. It says that before granting a special event permit for a new event in Bond Park, the Events and Visitor Services Director shall present the application to the town board for review. So we could modify that in keeping with this conversation and have that discussion at a policy level, and that would be implementing this pretty broad approach that we have here in the reserved Bond Park for civic uses and support.
Didn't we just hear that it's an annual renewal that is subject to review?
It is an annual renewal, and if the board wants to see it every year, you could. The suggestion to go every 2 years would be, so it's not every single year the applicant has to come and re-up, basically. That could be a matter of discussion with the board. It is an annual approval, but we do not bring it to the board every year. We only bring it to the board per the code when it's a new event in Bond Park.
I understand.
So you said that the contracts come up in January. Is there any indication or insinuation that, yeah, hey, we'll see you next year when it's finished? I mean, is it kind of a given that you're going to get to do it again next year, or how does that work?
It's really, they file for a permit and it goes through the approval process. So there's nothing said that, hey, we'll see you next year or that type of thing.
Okay.
But these events have been in Bond Park well before I got here. So it's been a long time.
I was just wondering if it would be helpful. I mean, I think we need to have something and, addressing it with every board or every new board. But if you could visit with them about, hey, this is the direction that we're going. We would still love you to bring the event to our town. How does our event center, this is where you could host it. Would you be interested in that? I hate to lose something that people are excited about. And so just kind of get a feel for where they're at with it before, we say, okay, yeah, no, next year you're out. I mean, that's pretty fast, right? If they've been here that long.
Sure. I mean, we can definitely have discussions with them, but there is a charm of being in Bond Park, especially in the summertime. And so I'm not sure what they would say at that point, but we can, sure, we can have discussions with them.
I think, my God. I think Travis's suggestion about the municipal code section, I think that seems reasonable, but I like what you suggested about, and I hopefully caught it, but jotted down that existing private events at Bond Park may remain per board discretion, but may be offered or encouraged to pursue alternate locations. That to me feels like a really straightforward amendment that doesn't cut anybody off at the knees for next summer. And I agree. I know of people who fly in every year for Wine Fest and stay with their girlfriends for 4 days or whatever. So I think that gives us the opportunity to review those, but doesn't implicitly imply that they're not going to be renewed. I think is a good catch. So I'd be supportive of that if we were willing to make that as an amendment. And if so, I'm happy to make that a motion if that's acceptable. Were you going to say anything else? Okay, just want to make sure. Oh, great. Okay, so I would move for the approval of the guiding philosophy for events with the amendment under Reserve Bond Park for civic uses and support of existing private events at Bond Park may remain per town board discretion, but may be offered or encouraged to pursue alternate town locations.
Second.
Further discussion? We can vote. The amended guiding policy has passed unanimously. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks.
Item 7 is the 2026 strategic plan adoption, and Town Administrator Mahalik will present.
Thank you, Mayor. This is the culmination of the town's strategic planning and budgeting process. As you all recall, you held 2 town board strategic planning sessions on March 13th and April 18th of this year. That resulted in the provisional strategic plan, which you adopted on May 27th. That provisional strategic plan, and for those listening or in attendance in the audience, the provisional strategic plan is what we would like to get done next year before we go through contact with financial reality through the budget process. So that provisional strategic plan guides the development of the town administrator's proposed budget, which you all approved in November. Through that budget approval, there were some modifications required to the provisional strategic plan, and so we're back, as we are at the end of every year, to present and ask for adoption of a final 2026 strategic plan. This is the final document that guides our work in 2026. Attached to the packet, there are the original provisional strategic plan with edits redlined, as well as a clean version. I do want to highlight 3 areas where we're proposing changes from the provisional strategic plan. The first one is in the governmental services and internal support outcome area. We'd like to clarify that Objective 7C1 is to continue to digitize community development planning and zoning records, not to finish them. Those records are quite voluminous, and we don't want to give the impression that we intend to get all of those done next year. Secondly, in outstanding guest services, we are proposing to remove Objective 5A1. That's the visitor center restroom stall art. That objective did not receive funding through the budgeting process because of the expense associated with that project. It was about $50,000. And then lastly, we've removed Objective 1A1 in transportation. Construct the first phase of the US 34 and State Highway 7 trail reconstruction projects. There is no funding for that objective currently. Staff does plan to seek funding for that objective in 2026. Happy to answer any questions if you have them. Again, that redlined copy and the clean copy are attached.
Is there public comment on the strategic plan as presented by Town Administrator Mahalik with the 3 modifications? I see none. Trustees, any questions or comments? Lacking that, a motion?
I move to approve the 2026 strategic plan.
I'll second.
Mayor Pro Tem Sinek move to approve of the strategic plan as described by Town Administrator Mahalik and Trustee Youngland seconded. At this point, we can go ahead and vote. We're all pretty familiar with it by this time this year. And it passes unanimously. We're on to item 8 of the action items, closure of town offices on December 26, 2025. And Travis, you will be talking to us about this.
Thank you, Meyer. Every 4 to 5 years, we run into a situation where the December 24th and 25th holiday does not bookend right to a weekend. So we create these gap days. Sometimes it's a Monday, sometimes it's a Friday. Typically, they are low demand days for town services, not a lot of walk-ins. But when town offices are open, we have to make sure that somebody is here. We have to manage vacations. So I am asking the board to consider allowing the closure of town offices on Friday, December 26th, to allow employees to be at home with their families or significant others, as well as to eliminate the challenges with scheduling over that holiday, and to recognize employees for their efforts in 2025. It's nice when we have this opportunity to do so, to take advantage of it. A couple of items. One, you may be asking why you are receiving this item. The town administrator under Policy Governance 3.8.1 cannot change his or her own benefits. Because town hall closures impact me as well, I believe this has to come to the board. I have been asked about the cost relative to this proposal. There is not a direct cost insofar as this money is budgeted. These wage dollars go out the door no matter what, whether it's employees taking vacation, whether it's employees coming to work. So the cost is in productivity, and that is a real cost. I've been asked to quantify that. We did a worksheet, and we quantified the cost of a day's worth of labor for town employees, that productivity loss at about $62,400. It's not an insignificant amount of money. It equates to about $343 an employee. It is an end-of-year recognition. It's an end-of-year bonus, effectively, and that is the impact from a financial productivity standpoint. I do want to touch real quick on the emergency services. Those would continue as normal. We would handle the emergency services employees that have to work on that day by giving them a floating holiday that they could use at any time before December 31st, 2026. So effectively, every town employee, the 182 or so that would qualify for this day off, would receive a day off, whether it's on the 26th or some other day. It is a paid day off. The cost impact is the productivity impact, not a direct cost impact to the town budget. And I'm happy to answer any questions that you might have.
Is there any public comment on this item? Trustees? Trustee Lancaster?
Just a couple comments. One on the productivity loss. I know that's the crunch the numbers, but as someone who has worked on those gap days, the productivity on those days is not that high. It actually is really bad, and nobody comes in. Yeah, I know productivity. However, interesting, that the reason you had to bring this to us is because of policy governance, right? So if you worked on that day, you wouldn't have to bring this to us.
That is correct.
I'm not suggesting it,
And I don't think
just
that would
observing.
be a very appropriate way to approach this issue.
Trustee Hazelden?
Yeah, I think I'm glad you brought this before us. I'm very supportive of it. I think it's really rare that we as a town board have an opportunity to demonstrate our appreciation and recognition for employees in this way, minus, our annual budget review and our process and when we review, benefits and give direction in that way. That's more of a, that's part of the job, is evaluating what people, what our merit increases look like and things like that. But it's very rare that we as a town board could have a direct, way to say thanks to staff for all their hard work. So I'm excited to support this tonight. And I think, and this may be telling about what generation I come from, but I think productivity cost in that way of looking at it as the 62,000, I think that's it is an element we have to consider fiscally, of course, as being a town board, but I don't think that is a real designation of organizational health and well-being of our employees. I think there are other ways that we can, that we could see the benefits of offering this to staff that goes beyond, just the fiscal numbers on paper. I think this gesture would be a really wonderful thing that we could do for staff, so I'm excited to support it tonight.
I actually think it increases production. Because it makes staff know that they are needed and they're appreciated. And I would actually be more concerned about the amount of time, amount of money it costs to figure out the production costs that we're losing than the fact that we're losing 62,000. So I'm totally supportive of it.
Trustee Brown?
I am also supportive of it. It should improve and help with employee morale, which you can't measure in terms of productivity. And I just think it's the right thing to do.
Trustee Youngland?
I think the productivity on the return date is going to be way higher than the 63,000. So to me, it's a no-brainer. You have to give pats on the back when you can. And so I look forward to voting in favor of this.
Yeah, I prefer to be Scrooge after the three ghosts rather than before. I don't think it's going to take the town down some dark passageway toward missing out on a lot of things that could happen. I think it would be a low productivity. It is good for us to weigh this, though, because it is of public consideration. So, but I'll be supporting it. Trustee Eigel.
Well, I hate to be the rainy day, the brown cloud here, but the money does matter. The productivity in town government does matter. And when I talk to town employees, they are happy to work for the town. They feel appreciated generally, most days, right? Like everybody on a job. The benefits are excellent. The reliability of the payroll of the town is excellent. I believe the work environment is excellent. I think if you want to get a solid job, the town is a great employer from everything that I have learned. So I think the town is a great employer overall. I asked for the numbers on what is the lost productivity for that day. Because owning a business, you do look at the numbers, and to pay everybody for a day of work, or if you were going to have to work that day and you got called back, we would have that exposure of overtime. These are little technical things that philosophically my peers have spoken that this is the right thing to do. It's important to recognize people. We have to say good job. I'm saying that, and I'm not very happy that this was brought up before the public to say, I want to recognize town employees with a day off. Because then if I have any questions or any pushback, it portrays me as not liking town employees. I like town employees. I think that you all have great positions, do a good job, and I believe are fairly recognized. I have received feedback and feel that during COVID, during difficult weekends downtown, during times where you don't know if there's a customer coming in the door or a service contract coming in, you wonder if that business is going to be good or bad. The town government is reliable. This is a job that works every day. I think electively adding a holiday effectively and handing a slip to an employee who comes to work on the 26th to say, here, take this paid day anytime in the next year is overly generous. And I think in a period of time when we are looking at sales tax is a terrible way to look at the health of our community financially because it doesn't track all the other factors. In a flat revenue of tax year, I think that giving up $60,000 in productivity is something that I can't support because I feel like the town employees are recognized, supported, and loved. In this day, now having this conversation in public, I will have the reputation as the Scrooge. But I will strive to continue making good financial decisions. So I appreciate your gesture toward the employees that are valuable to this community, Travis. Thank you for making the gesture. Unfortunately, I think the dollar value and the productivity loss is something that I can't support tonight.
Yeah, I don't think there's any stigma, Trustee Eigel, with making the counter argument. It's perfectly valid. My guess, just knowing a lot of these employees, is probably a lot of them on that Friday will be working on whatever documents they're working on and answering emails and doing a lot of the stuff that they would have done in the office, albeit likely doing it from their home or a family place. But that's just speculation. Anyway, Trustee Hazel.
I had a question for Travis, or maybe just a clarification, but I just want to say, I don't think anyone's suggesting that the money doesn't matter. I think we're all conscious of what, we're not willing to throw $62K out the window. I think we're just saying, I will say, I think I'm saying that I find the measurement of organizational health to go beyond just a single number. So that's, I just want to clarify that for my personal statement. But Travis, I wanted to ask for you, it was in the memo, but I want to clarify and make sure I understand. So non-emergency staff, it would act like it's a holiday for this year only, that they wouldn't have to come in on Friday. But if you're, dispatch or PD or somebody like that, you do receive a floating holiday to use for future, but that's for the emergency personnel who don't follow the normal Monday through Friday 9 to 5.
Correct. So two items. Yes, for emergency employees, patrol and dispatch primarily, that are working and scheduled to work that day, they would receive a floating holiday. I do want to, and I neglected to do so, and Trustee Eigel's comment reminded me to touch on 2 items in the memo. If an employee is called in on that day, if it's windy and our power and communications crews have to come in, that does incur extra hard dollar costs to the town above and beyond what we would have anticipated if that call out is happening during the day where they otherwise would be working. And then the other item that's worth noting, because it is a real financial impact, if town offices were open on December 26th, it's likely that a fair amount of town employees would be taking that vacation day. And when they take a vacation day, it reduces the financial liability to the town for earned vacation hours. So there are those 2 elements. Certainly the day off and the floating holiday for folks that have to work do have a financial impact. The $62,000 was a proxy for productivity. It's the closest thing that we could find.
Thank you.
Trustee Lancaster.
Don't we lose $62,000 a day before as well?
Sorry, Trustee Lancaster, can you repeat that?
If people aren't working the day before on the Thursday, are we losing $62,000 of productivity?
Of productivity,
If they had
correct.
worked that day?
Every day off, every vacation day, every sick day that the town grants through our benefits is a loss in productivity.
So we
And
can
the town
we can make that same argument about Christmas Day.
Correct. I think the town has established a set number and a set exposure of those days, and that the willingness to take that loss in productivity as a recruitment or retention tool to stay competitive. This is an addition to that.
So when you came up with the 62,000, it's any day of the year, basically. I mean,
It is wages for one day,
Right.
wages for one day, 8 hours of a work day.
okay, so really aren't taking account of productivity, because the amount of people coming in for services on the day after Christmas is not the same as somebody coming in July 10th. It's not the same.
It is a proxy for productivity. It's the closest measurement I could get to what's the fiscal impact
And I
of a
get
day
it.
off.
I may get where you get the number. I'm just saying is that, when I look at it, I'm not looking at the proxy. I'm looking at July 10th is not the same as December 26th. It just isn't. So
You're saying half the people could be gone.
not even that. I don't think people come in for the services.
Oh,
So it's not like the town clerk's not seeing, 50 people they might see in a regular day. They'll see one person. That's not the same productivity that's in July. It just isn't. There's not as many builders coming in with plans or whatever, or anything like that. So I actually don't agree that even in proxy, and there's no way to get the numbers, I get that. But I don't agree it's the same as any other day of the year. It just isn't, in my mind.
Trustee Ugg.
So employees can take that day vacation though, right?
Correct. With the small caveat that we have to make sure that we have sufficient staff to run operations
But
during that day.
vacations are approved, and so there's not a risk of not having services if it's a work day. And families could still be together on that important day in between 2 days off and a weekend. So it's possible that things are okay if it's a work day and the effect on the town's exposure, financial exposure is reduced. Because you wouldn't have to pay those days out if they retired or left the town, and you have to pay them in cash.
Correct. That's that first bullet under the financial resource impact.
I see no.
Sorry, the second bullet under the financial resource
Go
impact.
ahead. Oh, I see no additional commentary. Would someone like to make a motion?
I move to approve the closure of town offices on December 26, 2025.
Second.
Trustee Hazelton moved to approve this closure. Trustee Youngland seconded. Seeing no other discussion, we'll vote. The measure passes 6-1. We will move on to report and discussion items. Qualified exempt child care provider guidelines. Again, thank you for your patience, Manager Bangs, and you are up. And your supporting cast showed up a while ago too, so.
All right. We are here tonight to look at a policy recommendation for qualified exempt provider guidelines. Earlier in the year, it was almost 6 months ago already, we presented updates to Policy 225, the Child Care Funding Guidelines, back in July. Part of that was upstanding a new annual subsidy for child care providers called the Child Care Stability Funding. This brought up a conversation about FFN providers or family, friends, and neighbors, what license exempt meant, and how we could include them in some of these critical subsidies that we provide to child care providers, noting that they are a critical piece of the solution to addressing child care in our community. So the Child Care Stability Funding, while that was kind of the catalyst to a lot of this conversation, these guidelines would also support funding that is distributed through other organizations such as EVIC's Family Resource Center and tuition assistance, or other programs that we might stand up and include FFN providers in. So that being said, we took the information we received from that conversation and a few other conversations with tuition assistants throughout the year and provided what's in your packet tonight as the qualified exempt child care provider guidelines. This establishes a local process for individuals to be eligible to receive 6E lodging tax funding through, as I mentioned, existing subsidies and programs, as well as grants, tuition assistance, and stability programs. This program, or these guidelines, do mirror existing framework with the Colorado Department of Early Childhood Education, specifically what they call qualified exempt under the CCAP, the Colorado Child Care Assistance Program. So really aligned with that. And while CCAP is frozen, this would be kind of in place of that because providers, FFN providers, aren't applying for that at this time.
Will CCAP ever be unfrozen?
I am not holding my breath.
Okay.
And I think similar to what happened last time, even once it was opened back up, the wait list took years, and kids are only under 5 for so many years, so becomes obsolete. Yep, exactly. We're always trying to hit a moving target, guys. All right, so what was proposed tonight, again, this is a report and discussion item, so this is essentially a draft. This is a study session type work presentation. What we proposed was a localized pathway for these providers who are exempt from being licensed. It enhances efficiency and clarity in these local funding administration of 6E funds, establishes accountability. I know that was one of the things we really wanted to make sure and stand up was that not just anyone could claim they were watching a neighbor and being an FFN provider, and I'd love tuition assistance too. So hopefully what we presented is aligned with that. Supports equity by expanding access to informal care funding opportunities, and then also supports families and caregivers by expanding the opportunities for childcare. So within your guidelines, just really briefly, to become qualified exempt, the individual must submit just a general application form with general information to give us kind of a list of who is interested and who is providing this care. Successful completion of required background checks. You notice there was fingerprinting background checks, CBI and FBI, as well as child abuse and neglect. Those are all similar to what that CCAP qualified exempt requires. And then demonstrate compliance with some of the safety standards that were listed. One of the unique things as far as under the required, one sec, I want to make sure I didn't get too far ahead of myself. Nope, okay. Along those lines, organizations that are distributing these 6E funds would have to have confirmation that these providers are verified before they can begin distributing funds. Funds may not be distributed to providers whose status has lapsed. We did request that the provider go through this process every 2 years, or if there's a huge shift in family dynamics. And so if new people are moving into the home, we'd want to make sure they're applying again, updating those background checks. If they change locations or do an addition to their home, anything along those lines, we want to be aware of that. And then the town also recommends that the organization who's distributing funds have their own agreement with the provider in addition to our agreement with them. Again, the background checks, that was something that we talked about a lot. We went along with what CCAP was already requiring for their qualified exempt, which is a CBI and FBI. This is a fingerprint-based system. And it is what is under the Child Care Licensing Act. Oh, sorry. Skipped ahead. The fingerprint-based check identifies any criminal history that disqualifies an applicant under the Colorado Child Care Licensing Act. And then again, the child abuse and neglect records checked, that is the Trails database. And that would be for each person 16 and over living in the home. So then when it comes to the safety standards, one of the things within the guidelines we refer to is other organizations that are providing FFN training or workshops. So EVIX Family Resource Center has a program right now that FFN providers can go through that checks almost all of these boxes. There's a couple things in addition that are in this proposal. There's also a program called the PASO program that has other, it's a cohort over a longer period of time that applicants could participate in, and the ECCLC co-op of care. So there's a couple different ways that participants could go through completing some of these standards. They all include CPR and first aid, health and safety coursework, and then this proposal includes a health and safety home inspection, which is not required by CCAP. EVIX has a checklist that they have their participants go through, but doesn't actually bring anybody into the home. So that's one of their recommendations on a later slide that we can look at. Oh, that's the wrong one. Oh, sorry, this is the wrong slideshow. Let's see if, okay. That's fun. So some of the feedback that we had from other providers, I'm going to pull up the slide on mine.
Got to enable the editing, I think, to change it. So.
Yeah. Sorry about that. The slide that was supposed to be after that was in regard to stakeholder feedback. EVIX, who is here, they went through everything and they included, they would like to be the organization that actually manages all of the process and the data, and then they would let us know who was verified and who was qualified. They already have a very similar process, and that was something that they were interested in. They're also currently using Checker, but in our conversations today, they were eager to get on board with the fingerprinting CBI, FBI stuff as well. And then that discussion about the home inspection, if we have the individuals just fill out a checklist versus actually having someone go in the home and do that home and health and home safety check. In addition to that, ECCLC, they reviewed everything and didn't have any strong feedback. Of course, with the middle income tuition assistance program, Bridge Care isn't currently set up for that, but that is something they're looking at moving forward. But that would be something that would happen right off the get-go, and including qualified exempt under that tuition assistance program. The other feedback they had was and I thought this was interesting, she just messaged me yesterday, Carly, their early childhood workforce manager was out And she said the qualified exempt, using the same language as the Colorado Department of Education, could be confusing. So even though it is similar in what we're calling these providers, it could be confusing as if, are you qualified exempt under the state or are you qualified exempt under Estes Park? So that was just a couple of things that we had some conversations about from our key stakeholders. And then we have next steps. So after receiving direction from you all, we would go back and get a final draft of the guidelines, and then come back to you for an action item and include that in our policy 225 childcare funding guidelines. So as you can see, EVIX is here to answer any questions, and I'm happy to take any notes back to for our final draft.
Well, you know, we've discussed this before. I still concur with my prior thoughts that this is a great direction to be able to offer that option. It just broadens the ability to take care of the kids and to help our young workers with kids and keep their jobs going. So it's yet another good option. Trustee Youngland.
This is kind of getting in the weeds, but I'm curious. As far as the home inspection, I really feel that eyes on the home, in the home would be good rather than just a checklist. Who would be funding that? I mean, that piece of it. And then also, you know, because I hear EVIX wants to handle that. So do they have the capacity to do that in their funding? And then also, who's paying for the fingerprinting and all those other things that are required that EVIX would be doing? So are they taking it from the, come and tell me.
So I'm still kind of new to this. I'm not sure if I'm like supposed to.
So within the application, we do make note, like, do you need any financial assistance to become qualified exempt? And if that's the case, typically the fingerprints are about 55 per print. So if they have a lot of people in their household, that could be significant. So when they're filling out the application, part of that is, do you need financial assistance to get that? We don't want that to be a barrier to becoming qualified exempt. Becoming a qualified exempt provider means that they're eligible for things like these annual subsidies. So they would then be able to get, you know, here's your annual subsidy as well as tuition assistance support. So by getting to that next kind of checkpoint, whether it's because they want to be a licensed exempt provider for a short period of time or because they're working toward licensure, financial assistance would be a part of that long, you know, throughout every obstacle or throughout that whole process. And then when it comes to home inspections, EVIX brought up a really good point of just, they didn't really want the liability of going in there and, you know, dictating that it was safe or not safe. And so as an organization, we understand why they would prefer to have a checklist and have those individuals kind of go through that on their own. Based on, you know, some of the conversations we had, I thought having a third party or the town go in and do that inspection was the direction I was receiving. And I think that there's some place in the middle if there's discussion around that.
Yeah, I mean, that I would prefer that over a checklist. I think it just keeps everything up front and on board. And, you know, that way if you do see something, it could maybe prevent a catastrophic issue down the road. So I like this. I definitely see there's a place for these type of caregivers in our community. I can see where the confusion would be with the state, so I would like to see some type of different name or something. So it's straightforward. So we all know what we're talking about. You know, it's kind of like the workforce housing and, you know, let's not go there, right? Let's clarify from the very beginning, but I like the idea. Thank you.
How many do you expect that there will be in 2026 that you'll have to qualify?
I think, how many do you guys have now?
That is a great
Two?
question. So we have currently 2 FFNs that we're working with. And right now we have an FFN cohort of what, six that are working towards it, and I have 3 more ladies that are banging on the door to get into that cohort. And so the way that I want to kind of drive this conversation to a point that I made back in, I think, August, when we had a work session about putting tuition assistance towards unlicensed childcare providers. And tuition assistance, in my mind, and as an advocate for families for EVIC's Family Resource Center, tuition assistance is a social program. It is not a way to reward a provider for the administrative hoops they jump through. That we can use stability initiatives, grants, and things like that to try to drive people to improve themselves as businesses. But the tuition assistance is specifically to help families pay for their childcare. That's what it was voted to do. And so when we place a lot of these requirements and things for the FFNs to go through, which in a way I'm on board with, because I know that we want to be in line with what CCAP requires. What we're trying to do in EVICS is streamline that transition to CCAP. If it ever does come back, we want the families that are with FFNs to be able to apply for CCAP without having to change who they're going to, right? And that's the whole idea. So if we don't require anything, then we have these FFNs that are providing care, and then CCAP comes back and suddenly CCAP won't work with them because they don't have their, CPR training, they don't have their fingerprints, they don't have their child neglect and abuse background check. Like, they don't have any of these things because we don't currently require them. So upon reading Carly's draft, we were like, we should align with CCAP. We should do the same thing CCAP's doing. So that's the direction that we're going. It's not to say that we don't currently have a program, right? And what I will also say to the point of the home inspection, right? If you sign off, and this goes for the town too, if you guys want to open this can of worms, it's a legality issue. If you sign off that this home is safe, right? Now the state does that for the licensed child care providers, right? That's not on you guys. But if you guys sign off as the town of Estes Park that this child care provider is safe, and God forbid something happens, it would be very terrible and sad, but it would come down on the town. I'm pretty sure. I'm not a lawyer, but I'm pretty sure it would. Now, we provide a list of things that we think that home care providers should check, and we have those home care providers check them. They want safe environments for their kids, right? There's no providers that are trying to put kids in danger intentionally. They check these things. And then I'll also say that parents, right, we rely on the parents to be the people that want to put their kids in safe situations. So I, as a parent, walk into the YMCA, I drop my kids there at the preschool. I love it there, right? But I always take a look and make sure things feel safe. I'm not going to leave my kids in a place that doesn't feel safe, right? And I think that every parent is going to be that way. Now, your answer to your ultimate question, right? I just took all this opportunity to talk and talk your heads off. I'm so sorry.
No, that's good
but
information.
Answer to your original question, we have 6 in our cohort now, and I know 3 ladies that are very eager to join.
And my question in that regard was, this isn't some exorbitant number. If we chose from a town standpoint to even do an informal eyes-on, even if there's nothing actually signed off on, but at least brought expertise into those 6 or 9 or maybe a couple more in the course of the year, it's not something that's a paralyzing amount of work. It's not like 200 of them are waiting in the wings.
Yeah.
That was the
It's a
essence
handful.
of my
It's gonna continue
question.
to be a
But thank
handful.
you for the extra commentary. That's very relevant, Trustee Brown.
So I'm very interested in the whole inspection issue. If CCAP doesn't require it, I'm not sure why we would require it in the same setting. And particularly since we don't have any standards for determining what those safety standards would be, like you do with licensed childcare. And there are reasons to think that it has to be different with a home environment than it would be in a licensed childcare facility anyway. So, I don't know what's on your checklist. I presume it's, a bunch of things that we can, even the parents can verify.
Yeah, I helped draft the checklist that we currently use, and it's how did I kid-proof my own house?
Right.
Cover the outlets,
Well, the other
make
thing,
sure your TV's bolted to the wall.
are we going to impose the same standards that we impose on vacation rentals, for instance? How far do you go with this, with the safety thing? I just think that there are, as you point out, there are kind of built-in controls anyway with parents and, your standards that you're putting in. And I don't see the justification for adding health and safety inspection, particularly when we don't know what that would entail.
Sure.
And when CCAP wouldn't have required it, so.
Like you said, it's required for licensed, it's not required for their qualified exempt. Yep.
Trustee Hazelton.
Jason, did you have a comment?
No, I was actually going to ask for a clarification also on what we're envisioning that checklist entailing, because I was under the impression it was really high level, like building inspection type stuff, not what Ms. Schmidt was just referring to, TVs bolted in. I share the concern about the town being responsible for that level of detail and the liability associated with it. So high level, my question is, what would we be looking for and hoping to seek direction from the town board on that?
I really appreciate the inclusion of the piece about if the composition of the house changes, because I think that's really important. And then my question for you, Carly, is if you can clarify, and sorry, I feel like I need this explained to me really straightforwardly. You had mentioned in your presentation that there was some qualification of this that EVIX wanted to manage, but in the packet, we're talking about the town holding on to these documentations. Can you explain what you're presenting, if you're looking for direction on that, what your recommendation is as a staff member?
Yeah, my recommendation was that town would be kind of the manager and holder of the process, simply because it does extend outside of just tuition assistance. We're also looking at this for subsidies and, future agreements with ECCLC if we go down that route. It's more than just one organization. That is to say that EVIX has a program that any provider could go through that would get them through the majority of all of this. We would just make sure that all of that is also submitted to us and they're included in our database in order to be considered for 6E funding.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Trustee Lancaster.
I also have some concern about not doing the inspection. I mean, I understand a list is nice, but I believe in trust but verify. I would rather see that. To me, it's kind of analogous to if we just said, instead of doing building inspections, we just asked the builder to fill out a checklist and say, yeah, I did all these things. We'd save a lot of money on building inspectors. I'm not sure we're making it a safer community. And in this case, we're dealing with children and their lives. I would ask Attorney White, I assume, just like any other type of inspection, we're not held liable if we miss something or something changes that through governmental immunity.
Yeah, we have governmental immunity. We also have insurance.
Yeah, so the idea of some kind of liability is really not an issue. Okay. Yeah, I would prefer to see, and we're only talking about 6, maybe 10 a year. That's not that very many.
And I'm hearing something between the full licensing home inspection and something that it's not full blown, it's something in between, some kind of health and safety inspection in
Yeah, I
between.
think just confirming what's on that checklist.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, I was gonna say that exact thing. We keep saying, well, what are you looking for? Well, we have a checklist, right, that y'all think is important, right? So we go through that checklist and maybe add some things or whatever. I, as a parent, would not check and see if the TV was bolted in. I don't think I do with my own children. They're glad they made it through childhood. But I think it's a great thing.
They were big TVs back then too.
They were, it wasn't that long ago. Thank you very much.
Cubes too, so it didn't tip over like.
But I did have one that wrote with a Sharpie on the pen. Anyway, on the TV. But I think those are good things for us to look for. I don't think, building inspector, I mean, I think that we have somebody go in. It's not that much. Town liability, that is my least of my worries. It just is. I mean, that might be Jason's, and that's his job to be worried about that. I'm worried about the kids. This is why I was the one that started this in the first place. Making sure it's CPR, make sure background checks and everything else. The kid's the most important thing here. We are insured. The liability thing, it's kind of like saying, oh, well, let's not put safety things in cars because if they break, then we're liable. I mean, it's just silly. So I think that we are liable anyway because it's our kids. So I think we do have an inspection in person, and I think the town keeps management of it because it is taxpayers' money. And I think that there has to be some kind of central control out of that. So those are my two things.
When we come back with the final draft, we'll, start at the full licensure home inspection and look at what the barriers will be and costs, because again, whatever those things are that are required of our FFN providers, we want to make sure that it's not super expensive, and I think there's a midway point that we'll bring back to you in that final draft.
Well, we'll look forward to the final draft then. I think you have what you need to
You feel good?
proceed.
I'll go through
Great.
my list.
Are you good?
We're great.
Carly?
Thank you.
Okay. All right.
Thank you.
Thanks. The kids, always take care of the kids. We're now going to enter executive session, the last item on the agenda, so we'll do a little room prep in a second. But this will be to discuss purchase, acquisition, lease, transfer, or sale of any real, personal, or other property interest, section 246402-4A CRS, and for a conference with an attorney for the board for the purpose of receiving legal advice on specific legal questions, section 246402-4B CRS, potential locations and real property transaction alternatives for relocation of the police department. That is the announcement. I will need to have a vote to enter executive session, so if we can get a vote.
You need a motion?
No.
We need a motion to go into executive session here.
Oh, okay.
I move to go into executive session for section 24-6-4024A.
Second.
Just
All
to
right.
clarify, that was 4024A and 4024B.
That is correct. Thanks for both.
Yeah.
Okay.
Hey, we got it before 10. How about that?
Looks like I'm waiting on one more.
Mayor?
Not me, not me. No. Here we go. Okay, we have approval from the board to move into executive session. It'll take a little bit to convert the room, and then we will proceed.